Joining me now is Ross McElroy, President and CEO of Fission Uranium. Great to see you, sir.
Great. Nice to be here with you, Mark.
Now, we were talking before we started here. It's hard to believe it was 2012 when RRR was discovered. Here you are, 11 years later, you got a feasibility study, and you said it proves that your project is elite around the world.
Indeed.
In terms of uranium. And you also said there were 3 or 4 main highlights. So could you briefly run through those?
Sure. I'd say, what we've seen so far is just the robustness of the economics. So, the highlights for me, first of all, we had a over 70% increase in the NPV. We went from $700 million to $1.2 billion NPV after tax. I think, some other wins, our mine life increased substantially, almost 50%. So, from 7 years to 10 years. And, there's still a lot of room for growth, but I think that was a substantial change from the pre-feasibility study right there as well. CapEx was surprisingly in line with what we had on the pre-feasibility study. And I think that is a huge win, because in this inflationary environment that we're in, if we're able to keep the initial CapEx at even actually marginally less than what we had in 2019 pre-feasibility study, that is a huge win for us. And even with all of that, we still show ourselves to be, potentially be a very low cash cost producer, sub $10 a pound U3O8. So that puts us in an elite category worldwide by all metrics.
So you're busy with your environmental impact assessment. Naturally, you want to get to construction at some point. What's the timeline there? Do you know yet?
Yeah, sure. So formally, we'll be engaged in the environmental impact assessment by about Q3 of 2023. So over the next 7 or 8 months from now, we will have our formal application sitting with the regulatory groups for the EIS. That has a timeline of about 24 to 36 months. So, that coming out of the EIS, if you're successful, you'll have your licenses to build and operate and sell uranium. So that puts us into construction by 2026. And we've seen in the feasibility study, it's about a 3-year period from beginning construction until ore is coming out of the ground. So, our timelines basically take us to be a producer by 2028, 2029. So, I think we're pretty much on target with those numbers.
Right. Now, a lot of tailwinds for uranium and the nuclear sector, as you know. And you've said you really think Fission Uranium is just nicely positioned by the time you get to production. This is it's a multi-year thing we're looking at here. So can you sort of elaborate on that a bit?
Oh, indeed. I think we're in a great long-term bull market in the uranium sector. The price of the commodity, we've seen it move up significantly from where it was just a few years ago. I know when we did our pre-feasibility study in 2019, the price of uranium spot price was around $30 a pound. Now it's $50. Most the consensus out there is that incentive prices to begin any new projects, or most new projects globally, north of $90 a pound. The price of uranium is on the way up. It's the electrification of everything, and the appreciation that nuclear is such an important part of that, of that picture. You want clean, green energy. It has to happen through nuclear. There's no path to net zero without going through nuclear. So we think the whole sector overall is in a very long-term bull market, and we're just at the early innings of it.
And having said that, it appears as if the market may be underappreciating your story at least from an enterprise value per pound perspective.
Yeah.
So what do you think the market's not quite getting at this point?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think having completed the feasibility study, I think is a good first step. And since we announced, I guess since the beginning of the year, we're up about 15%. So we are starting to gain more traction. If we look at ourselves just even over the last 2 or 3 years, we have significantly closed that valuation gap between what others with advanced projects in our part of the world were getting based on and what we were. It used to be almost a 3-for-1 enterprise value. We're now closer to about 2 2 to 1. So we do continue to gain ground. I think having the feasibility study and taking another layer of risk off the table and showing that we're advancing the project, I think we'll continually move towards closing that gap. And so I'm seeing good progress in there. Obviously, we won't be happy until we are at par with our other colleagues, but we're certainly on the right path there, and we'll continue to grow our story.
Well, we've been watching Fission Uranium on your path for more than a decade now. We're going to keep watching. Thanks for the update, and we'll talk to you again.
Very good, thank you.
All right, Ross McElroy, CEO of Fission Uranium.